Okay, deep in the heart of Europe, there's a crisis brewing. We're talking about political chaos, a budget that's completely out of control, and a problem so big it could seriously threaten the entire continent. Today, we're diving into what's going so wrong in France.
Take a second and just look at that number. That's France's national debt, over 3 trillion euros. For the first time in its history, the money the country owes is now bigger than its entire economy. It's just a staggering figure.
And get this, it's not even standing still. That massive number is getting bigger at a mind-blowing speed. Every single second that ticks by, another 5,000 euros gets tacked onto the bill. This is a crisis that's accelerating.
So that leads to the big question, right? How on earth did this happen? How did a nation that's supposed to be a symbol of European prosperity end up in such a dangerous spot?
All right, let's break this down. To really get a handle on how France got here, we first need to look at the warning signs flashing right now, the red flags that show just how serious this is.
The warning signs are everywhere, and they're impossible to miss. I mean, for 51 years in a row, that's half a century, France has spent more money than it's brought in. Its debt is now over 110% of its entire economic output. And as you'd expect, investors are getting nervous, so the cost for the government to borrow money is soaring. All this is happening while its political system seems to be in a state of total paralysis.
And you might be thinking, well, that's France's problem. But no, you have to understand this is a big deal for everyone. It's the second biggest economy using the euro. If France defaults, it's not just a local issue. It would send a catastrophic shockwave across the entire continent.
So let's rewind the clock. To understand the crisis of today, you have to go back to the promise that really defined modern France, a system that, for a long time, the world actually looked at with a bit of envy.
At the very core of French identity is this idea, this social contract. It's a promise the state makes to its people. From the moment you're born to the day you die, we've got your back. Your healthcare is covered. Your education, all the way through university, is free. If you lose your job, there are benefits to catch you. And of course, when you retire, a pension will be waiting for you. This isn't just policy, it's fundamental to who they are.
And you know what? For a long time, it really seemed to work. The economy was growing, people were living well, and it looked like France had cracked the code. But there was a hidden catch, a fatal flaw in the system. All of it was being paid for with borrowed money.
So when did the cracks in this promise start to show? Let's pinpoint the exact moments when this debt started to spiral completely out of control.
A huge piece of the puzzle is actually pretty simple, a demographic time bomb. You see, back in the 90s, the math worked. For every one person retired and taking benefits, you had 5 people working and paying into the system. But fast forward to today, that ratio has cratered. Now it's only 3 workers for every retiree. The tax base that funds the whole promise is shrinking.
Then, a series of global shocks came along and just poured gasoline on the fire. First, bam, the 2008 financial crisis hits and debt jumps from 60% to 80% of their economy. Then, through the 2010s, interest rates were super low, which basically made it feel like borrowing was free, allowing politicians to just kick the can down the road. And then, COVID hit. All that emergency spending sent the debt soaring past 110%, a level nobody had seen since the end of World War II.
And just like that, the illusion was shattered. The party was over. The era of pretending the debt didn't matter was gone. The French debt crisis wasn't some far-off theory anymore. It was real, and the country was caught right in the middle of it. So you're probably thinking, if the problem is this obvious, why don't they just fix it? And that question gets us right to the heart of the issue. France is trapped in a deep, deep political paralysis.
If you want to understand the gridlock, you just have to follow the money. As you can see, France spends a ton on its public services. But there's one expense highlighted right here that is eating the entire system alive: pensions. They chew up a staggering 14% of the whole economy.
Let me put that into perspective for you, because it's wild. The annual bill for pensions is now bigger than what France spends on its schools, its entire military, and all of its infrastructure, trains, roads, the whole thing, put together. It's completely unsustainable.
Now, the government knows this can't go on. So recently, they tried to pass what, by anyone else's standards, would be a pretty modest reform. just raising the retirement age from 62 to 64. I mean, just look at their neighbors. In Germany and Italy, it's already 67.
And this is where you see the political trap in action. The government proposes that tiny reform, and what happens? The country explodes. More than 3 million people hit the streets to protest. Strikes basically shut the country down. The government itself almost collapsed. And in the end, while the reform technically passed, the political damage was so huge that nothing else can get done. And all the while, that debt just keeps climbing.
And this is not a new story. This is the same cycle that has paralyzed France for decades. Every single president who tries to touch what they call the third rail of politics, pensions, runs into the exact same wall. A reform gets proposed, the streets fill up, the government backs down, and nothing ever really changes. No reform ever sticks. Okay, and this brings us to the final and frankly the most frightening part of this whole story, because a paralyzed France creates an impossible choice for the rest of Europe. If these numbers look familiar, they should. They are eerily similar to where Greece was right before its debt crisis blew up back in 2010. The interest rate the government pays to borrow money? Almost exactly the same. The debt compared to the size of the economy? Dangerously close. The only real difference is the scale. France's economy is nearly 10 times bigger than Greece's was. The Eurozone barely managed to bail out small countries like Greece and Portugal. Bailing out an economy the size of France wouldn't just be hard, it might actually be impossible. This puts the Eurozone in a true damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If things go south and France needs a rescue, Europe has two terrible options. Option A, they step in to save France, but in doing so, they might break all their own rules and destroy the Euro's credibility. Or option B, they refuse to help and risk watching one of the founding members of the entire European project collapse. Either way, it's a potential catastrophe. Which leaves us with this final, very sobering question. Everybody agrees that France is simply too big to be allowed to fail. But given the sheer size of its debt and a political system that seems completely unable to fix it, we have to ask, is it also too big to save?